Welcome back to Apex Alchemy. Today I'd like to discuss the ups and downs, the pros and cons of carrying the legendary Buck 110. The Buck 110 has brass bolsters, lockback, ebony wood handles, pin construction, 420HC steel, and a classic Bowie blade with a false wedge. Not sure that'll pick up, but there it is. The 110 was very popular amongst Les Paul playing rock stars until 1987, when Sal Glisser introduced the Spyderco with the pocket clip. As you can see here, the Buck 110's ebony handle matches the fretboard of this beautiful 1994 Gibson Les Paul. But unlike the Les Paul, the 110's neck won't break on you if you leave it in this position too long. Oh my God, would you look at that checking. Enough about rock stars though. Unless we want to keep talking about the Buck 110. Let's jump into this conversation. What makes the Buck so good and so bad at the same time? So, ladies and gentlemen, I don't get paid by the hour, I get paid by the job. So my first thing that I dislike about the Buck 110, and it's not a huge deal, but when at work, if I can just slip a knife out of my pocket, deploy it, and put it back up with one hand, which I know that wasn't one hand, I had to finish it. It's easier, it's quicker, it takes less time. If I have to use my knife 28 to 56 times on a load, then the seconds add up. If it takes me 10 seconds to cut something with a knife in one hand, and oftentimes I still have what I'm cutting, which is plastic, in my left hand, but what I end up having to do with this knife is I have to lay the knife down, I have to dispose of what I'm cutting, and I have to come back, get my knife, close it, put it back in its pouch, and it takes time. It takes time. It's not a huge deal on a day-to-day basis. With regular tasks, I don't see anything wrong with how the Buck 110 operates. But at work, it does cost me time, and ultimately that does cost me money. And potentially, sometimes, ask Courtney, I'm within 12 to 13 minutes of being able to make it home or having to spend a night on the road. So if I can save 12 to 13 minutes with a faster knife, then I might get home. So it could potentially not only cost me time, on the job, but it could also cost me time away from home. So it's far fetched, but it's possible. So anyway, that'd be my first negative about the Buck 110. The first positive that I have about the Buck 110, man, I'm saying Buck 110 a lot. Let's just say 110 is this is a very easy blade to maintain. It's not high maintenance at 420HC. There's not going to be a lot of science into getting this thing sharp. With the denim here, I do have it sprayed down with a 5 micron diamond emulsion from Lacey EDC. Don't follow her on Instagram, you might as well. The strop was made by Nick Edward. Don't judge the strop. It's time for me to do some maintenance on the strop. But right now, it's still doing okay with this blade. But yeah, it may be time for me to rough this strop up and reload it. Regardless, it's also sprayed with 5 micron diamond emulsion from Lacey EDC. So the strop come from Nick Edward behind the edge, and the emulsion come from Lacey. And with the strop, you can go pretty far with a Buck 110, or for any kind of 420HC, regardless, right? All your knives going to need to be stropped. But easy maintenance, my first absolute love about the Buck 110. Okay, second. The second thing that I dislike about the Buck 110 is that it pretty much requires a pouch. You could stick it in your pocket, but the pouch does make it easier to operate. It's an adjustment period. It's not necessarily a negative. We'll get into that in just a little bit. It can be a positive, but at the same time, like if you're used to taking a knife out of your pocket, then it's not the same. So it's going to take an adjustment period if you want to use this knife. And I've got to use this knife for 3 more weeks, at least 3 more weeks. This is my Know Nothing November knife. So I'm carrying this, doing all the work for the month of November. So my second complaint is just, the fact that there's an adjustment period where you're not reaching in your pocket for your knife. So that's kind of a time thing too. It could be like grouped in was number 1. But it could also be grouped in with number 3. So we'll get into that in a second. The second thing I love about this knife is it's comfortable. It's not just comfortable in my hand, but the nice thick frame that it has and the solid construction. There's no hot spots anywhere except for that edge. This knife is really comfortable to work with. I've got absolutely no complaints in any kind of grip that I would put it in. Now, since it's a work knife, I'm just going to be typically, this is how I hold, the knife, is exactly like this. Most of the time, my pinky and my ring finger is not even on it. So I'm just doing my cut, and then I'm putting it up. But it's extremely comfortable, no matter what grip. It's extremely comfortable, and that is the second thing I love about the Buck 110. Number 3 will be a positive and a negative. It depends on your personality type. We're going to bring the pouch back into play. This is probably my favorite aspect of the knife in general. To be honest, it might not have been number 1, but it is my favorite aspect of the knife. Now, because I have a pouch on my side, I've had 2 great conversations with 2 new friends and 2 new subscribers to the channel when they asked me in public, what kind of knife you carrying? Cue that thumbnail. They get curious. When they see the knife is actually on your belt, you have people will come up to you and ask you what kind of knife you're carrying. And this opens doors for conversation with strangers. And if you like that, that's a good thing. I'm very personable like that. So this is really interesting. I had got to have 2 great conversations, one with a police officer in New Orleans, and he asked me about the knife. He said, what kind of knife you carrying? He said, I carried one of those for years. And the second one, and we talked for a good 20 minutes outside the store about his favorite knives. I showed him the Mayhem, the Cold Steel Mayhem. He had a kick out of that. It gives an opportunity to, and then he was asking, why do you have so many knives on you? Not like in a criminal type of thing, but he's just curious. And I told him I have a knife channel and I carry a lot of stuff around just to make shorts and this and that, yada yada yada. And it was really cool to be able to have those conversations. And without that pouch, those conversations wouldn't have existed, because I've never had anybody come up to me while I was carrying something with a pocket clip and ask me, what kind of knife you carrying? Not saying it's impossible, but people have to be way more observant. So while the pouch can be a negative, it can also be a positive. Now, the negative is going to come in. There's one more negative aspect to this pouch, and that will be the conversation. If you don't like having conversation and you don't want that attention attracted to you, and that doesn't fit your personality type, that's going to be a problem. Or it could be a problem. I suppose it may tie into a lot of your demeanor, whether you look like you're the type of person that could be approached in conversation, or if you carry yourself in a fashion where people feel like they're not going to be comfortable talking to you about stuff, then that might not be an issue at all. But if this pouch will attract attention and you don't have time for it, or you don't want to have these conversations, or if you consider them uncomfortable, then I would say that would be the third negative. In my case, that's not the case at all. I really enjoy having conversations with people about knives. That's why we got a channel. Guys, that's it, man. Well, and no sense in stretching it out any further than that and wasting any more of your time. That's all I've got for you. I've got 3 more weeks with the Buck, so expect another video. Week 1 is going great. The edge, halfway through with the week, and the edge is done pretty well. So we'll see how it's cutting after the stropping, and we will let you go. Enjoy your life. Do your thing. We'll catch you on the flip side. Ah. good enough. Maybe a little bit more work.